still works. How cool is that? Merry Christmas, do do do, do 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 do. Good afternoon. Yeah, a few people are coming, so.
You're not on your own. It doesn't get anything from the top. It's coming from the top end. I was thinking, sorry, now I've got double the amount of people know what you actually see.
That's unlikely. There are a few, but.
Are you finishing today?
Thank God for that, yes. Mind you, I will be here next week. Yeah. But no more lectures for this year. Do the important things. Play with my dog. I have the incredible luxury that I am on a teaching and scholarship contract. So.
You don't get pressured for any research. What kind of dog?
Black Labrador. 3.5 years old.
Not very old then.
No. Pretty much full of energy, if it suits him. And
That's a Labrador, isn't it? If they want.
Labradors, yeah, but Labradors are dogs anyway. That if they don't want, they don't want. But if they do, then you've got to get out.
yes, absolutely. I mean, of course, you have to endure that now. That's him in his typical position.
In the settee.
Actually, he's quite happy with not anything. At the moment, he's just totally blissed out.
Oh, look at that. Yeah. Oh, that's the sign that they are
Yeah,
content and happy.
teeth out.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
It's across. It was a Lamberger.
they're quite big, aren't they?
It was a female, so it wasn't too bad. But she looked more the Briard, but lost the fur like the Lamberger. So all the undercoat is done.
Yeah,
You come out, you get.
and then you have the coat everywhere.
Yeah, you get the everywhere in the corners. It would all.
Whenever we have guests, we
Warn them.
Oh, don't wait a moment. We need to take the
fluff. The head.
the hairs of your plate, so you don't mind. You don't want a new plate, do you? No. Everything tastes better with dog hair on it.
And yeah, because I mean, at least it's a black lab. So if there's black lab that rubs up against black trousers, you couldn't see the hairs. But we used to warn people that came in black like that, and we had the Lamberger hair, and you just.
Mind you,
it was all
on Monday we get another one, which is a sort of a white. We think there is some Labrador in it. There might also be some monkey and cat. So it's a.
It's one of those.
It's a rescue dog. So.
Oh, you're having it, or are you just looking after it?
No, we are going
You're going to
to.
keep
We
it.
have adopted her, and she is white.
Yeah, we used to have
So.
white. They had a
Good
Lamberger,
afternoon.
and they
I like
had
your hat, sir.
Thank you very much. Yes.
two golden retrievers.
Oh yeah.
They were the same with the white.
Yeah.
You go out into the woods and they come back because they used to love going into the water.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
they
it's
got
same.
full of mud and wood.
I mean, Coco. He is as soon as he sees water,
Off we go. Yeah. Fergus used
Belly
to be
flop.
like that, and
has to be done.
then- Yeah.
Good afternoon.
And they couldn't get out of the hole. So we were
Most wonderful good afternoon.
to drag them out. Get hold of the column. Without falling in ourselves.
Yep. Let's see how many we've got. Most wonderful good afternoon.
Worthwhile turning up.
I can't say it publicly because students might listen in because it's live streamed. Would I turn up?
Like your hats?
Thank you very much, Oscar.
Good afternoon.
afternoon. Come on. Good afternoon. Or just simply those who haven't realized that it's the last day of term. Could just as well happen. Most wonderful good afternoon. Have a look how many are there. Oh, it's not too bad. It's far more than I thought. That's pretty good, actually. Yeah. Not yet 10%, but we are getting there, I'm sure. And I can't even cancel it because I told my kids that they can watch it on YouTube, so yeah, I have to do it whether I want it or not. But I do want to do it. Oh wow, that's cool. Good, most wonderful good afternoon.
Hello.
Most wonderful good afternoon.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And you good self?
Not too bad, not too bad. Busy.
That's good, isn't it?
Yes, it is actually. It is. It's nice. You got lots of school children watching the snow dragon, and it's
Oh,
lovely.
right.
Hopefully, just getting ready for the holidays and enjoying the time.
Absolutely. Good afternoon.
Do you want to keep this door open for a bit, or are you going to stay in there whilst it's open? I'll tell you what, because we do have a key, but we need to have someone at the door the whole time.
No, I just sort of, this indicates to the students that we are open for business.
Okay.
But then at
Then you
3,
go.
I'm in there.
Yeah.
Is
no,
that,
don't worry.
is that all right?
Yeah, no, don't worry. Yeah, that's fine.
It's just quite nice to feel the pressure
I know.
occasionally.
Okay, push it.
Keeps me awake.
That's all right, don't worry.
Thank you.
Afternoon, sir.
Most wonderful good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Most wonderful one. Most wonderful good afternoon. Most wonderful good afternoon. Good afternoon. Most wonderful good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Most wonderful good afternoon. Good afternoon. I think we have about maybe 20 to 30 students, which is not a bad thing.
How many do you normally have?
The full cohort would be 275.
I haven't seen that many go past. It's all crept in the back at the top.
Well, I mean,
I think 2 young men crept in the back.
We went that way and then went upstairs, so I presume they went to the other way. Sitting at the back, they're probably on the back row.
well, you see, as I said, it is live streamed to YouTube. Good afternoon. Sorry?
Love the hat.
Thank you. It's live streamed to YouTube, and I told my kids that it's on this afternoon, so I have to do it.
Well, yes, yeah. Well, at least you've got live audience there.
Absolutely. And, I mean, students can watch it wherever, so they don't have to come here.
You could just sit in your office and just do it then.
Absolutely. Or in the pub.
Yeah, that would be
It's better.
Starbucks. Wherever you have good Wi-Fi.
a bit slow.
I could do that in the pub. Sorry. Oh, good Lord. That's heavy going. I wish you a Merry Christmas. Thank you. Good afternoon. I don't think you need to write a lot today. Only if you want to. Oh, it says live streaming. Hey, how cool is that? Thank you very much. I used to have a full Santa outfit, but God knows where this disappeared to. Shall we make a start? Yeah? Shall we make a start? Fantastic. Right, probably, well, first of all, welcome to our last session. I hope you all have sort of come to terms with the political results recently. Just out of interest, do you know what the word Tory actually means? No? You mean, sorry?
Oh, no, I've forgotten what I said, sir.
Oh. So, Tory is obviously, as you know, is a word for the Conservatives, yeah? But if you Google it or look up on Wikipedia, what Tory means is actually an Irish word which stands for robber or bandit. I leave you with that thought, right? Now, most of you have somehow realized that Christmas is upon us. And as a sort of a sign of respect, what I would like you to do right? I want to read you a little poem. "'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hope that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mama in her chief and I my cap had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. When out of the roof there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutter, and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new-fallen snow gave the luster of midday to objects below. Eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer, with a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be St. Nick. More rapid than eagles, his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by the name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen, to the top of the porch, to the top of the wall. Now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle, mount to the sky, so up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys, and St. Nicholas too. And then, in a twinkling, I heard on the roof the prancing and prawning of little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur, from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how twinkled! His dimples, how merry! His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard on his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke, it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl or full of jelly. He was chubby and plump and right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work, and filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk, and laying his finger aside of his nose, giving a nod up to the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team save a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim, ere he drove out of sight, Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night. Let's see what we get the lights back on, because there's a reason why I read you this poem. I hope you listened very carefully, because that is what we are going to discuss today, St. Nicholas, and a few other things. And I want to actually tell you the true story of Santa and his helpers. By the way, do you know who wrote this poem? It was a guy called Clement Moore who wrote this on the 23rd of December, 1823. And as tradition has it, in many American households, this poem is read out on Christmas Eve. Don't know, do we have any Americans here? Sorry? Sort of American. Do you read that out?
I used to, yeah, when I lived over there.
So I'm not fibbing.
No.
And it tells us a lot about this strange creature called Santa and his helpers. And I'm terribly sorry, but I have to break it probably not very gently to you. The Santa guy, don't trust him. First, let's talk about this one here. Who is that? Rudolph. What is Rudolph? Is he? Sorry? Genetically modified reindeer. Actually, it's interesting that you say that. It's interesting you say that. If you had listened carefully to the poem that I just read out, how many reindeers were there? 8. Was Rudolph there? Within the 8? No. Actually, Rudolph is a sort of a very recent edition, written in by a guy called Robert May, who wanted to promote a department chain in New York and added Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer, to the whole story. I probably should say that before 1823, before Clement Moore wrote this poem, there was no association between Christmas and Santa and the reindeers. The correlation coefficient was 0 at that point, right? Only with that poem, the whole hype of Santa and reindeer started. But it wasn't before 1939 that Rudolph sprang into the picture, if you like. But what is Rudolph? According to the poem, Santa dealt with tiny reindeers, as it says. Now, of course, we need somebody who is sort of from the Nordic countries who can probably confirm or reject what I'm saying. Do we have somebody here from, say, Norway? Thank you, Oscar. Sorry. So you are the judge now whether I talk total nonsense. Yeah. Now, reindeers, are they tiny? No, they're pretty large beasts. Yeah. Actually, there's an exception. So we could find tiny reindeers. On the island of, and I now make probably a total mistake, Svalbard. Did I say that right? Yeah. Yeah? Because it's an island, and as we know from biology, usually species are smaller on islands than on the mainland. So on the island of Svalbard, you would find actually small reindeers. So it's not impossible that Santa actually had 8 or maybe 9 reindeers, as described. Now let's look a little bit at Rudolph, because my feeling tells me he's an imposter. Let's assume that indeed he is a reindeer, perhaps from Svalbard. But there's one problem. It's not Rudolph. Why is it not Rudolph? Well, you need to know that reindeers belong to the group of the Cervidae, biologically, to the deers. And reindeers, or their wild cousins, caribous, are quite special in that not only the males, but also the females have antlers. Usually red deer, moose, all these other members of the deer family, the females don't have antlers. Reindeers have antlers. Female reindeers have antlers, I should say. And the interesting thing is that male reindeers will lose their antlers at the beginning of winter, shortly after the mating season. Female reindeers keep their antlers until springtime. Rudolph? I think not. Rudolphina? Maybe. But it doesn't sound right, you know. Rudolphina, the red-nosed reindeer. So, Rudolph, and if he is cheating about his gender, God knows what else is wrong with that guy. Yeah. There is some saving grace because we recently discovered that if you have a castrated male, sort of half a male, by the way, they are called steers, just for, Trivial Pursuit or something like that. Steers actually keep their antlers. They are male. So maybe Rudolph is Rudolph, but, sort of with some bits missing. But what about his owner? This St. Nicholas guy. Now, there is something interesting about this. And it's again linked to reindeer. There has been some research because people wanted to know more about this St. Nicholas. And actually, what they found is that St. Nicholas was predominantly in the northern hemisphere, Scandinavia, and Russia. So he turned up there in this region. Of course, where you have reindeers. But who was St. Nicholas? And people actually made a very interesting link, and that is also reflected in the poem. We believe that actually it was not just one St. Nicholas. St. Nicholas stands for a whole group of people belonging to a very important profession. Shamans, healers. They performed almost miracles. They were sort of almost GPs on the move constantly. Yeah? And as a sign of their job, guess what they wore? A coat, which was red. So they were moving around, red coat. Of course, they were, experienced people, and in these Nordic regions, unlike in Africa, where you also had healers, in Africa, it was the job was open for both men and women. This is where voodoo comes from. The Nordic healers were all male, experienced. Could explain the white beard, couldn't it? And there's another link. This link is this mushroom. Have you ever seen that mushroom? Do you know what it's called? Fly agaric, exactly. Why is it called fly agaric? In German, actually, you have pretty much the same word, Fliegenpilz, which means fly mushroom. Why do you think it's called fly mushroom?
It contains psychoactive substances.
Haha, yes, it does indeed. It contains psychoactive substances. You will see that sometimes people have used it to sprinkle fly agaric into milk to stop flies actually from, drinking milk. But I think that is a really, really tenuous link. Yeah. So it contains psychoactive substances. And by the way, if you look at the red coat of this mushroom, you can immediately see the link between this one and the shaman who wore red coat. By the way, if you think that this shaman stuff is all total nonsense, only yesterday I heard on the radio that in an EU country, I don't want to, single out a particular country, a lady is going to the court because she went to a shaman, paid 25,000 euros to have a ritual performed on her, and apparently it didn't work out as she expected, so she wants her money back. So the shamans are still with us. This mushroom, actually, is also a food source for, guess who? Reindeers, exactly. Reindeers are very often observed eating these mushrooms. Now you could argue, how do they see these mushrooms under the snow? Do you know the answer? Pigments in this mushroom absorb ultraviolet light. You say, so who cares? Ultraviolet light. But reindeers change their optical behavior during the winter. They actually are able to see ultraviolet light. That's why they change their eye color in winter. Usually, the eye of a reindeer is sort of yellowish in the summer, and it turns blue in the winter, and that allows them, the different pigments, they can see then ultraviolet light in the winter through the snow. And they can find these mushrooms. But the problem is that these mushrooms actually only psychoactive on humans. They are also psychoactive on reindeers. They behave rather strangely, but a little bit more about that in a minute, what it does to them. So we have a little bit of a link between shamans, Santa, and these mushrooms. But of course, because it is a shaman, they are in touch with the other world. And I tell you what, it's not that easy to get in touch with the spiritual world. But sometimes you can do that by, helping a little bit with some medication. I mean, at my age, I don't need these things anymore because for me, it's enough to get up too fast from a chair. It's the same as, smoking a joint, I believe. I've never tried it. But if you really are hardcore and want to get in touch with the spirits, you want a little bit of kick. And actually, reindeers have been observed to behave strangely, so humans then tried this fly agaric. And lo and behold, as you rightly said, psychoactive substances in it, which could easily bring you into some kind of trance. But the trance state is very often perceived as being in contact with, God knows where. You see that sometimes in students. They look at you, they look through you, and you think, good Lord, it's not just not the same planet, it's a different galaxy or maybe even a different universe. Yeah? So trance-like states with fly agaric. And actually this fly thing, as you rightly said, is probably a result of the psychoactive substance in this mushroom affecting certain parts of the brain. So, what is the main substance in this? Yeah?
Psilocybin.
Sorry?
Psilocybin.
No, It's not psilocybin. It's not magic mushroom. It is, has it decided to die? Oh yes, I just need to refresh. Is it? Oh yeah, we are back. The active substance in fly agaric, the thing that actually makes you feel, whoa, is this substance muscimol. And that's the structure of muscimol above it. And from the biosynthesis, it is produced from hypotonic acid. This guy here. I want you to look at the structure of hypotonic acid and tell me what class of substance this is. It has an aromatic group in it, yes. It is an isoxazole ring. But look at the other bits. As an alcohol, yep. It's an amine, a carboxylic group, and an amine. So together it is, sorry? It is an amino acid. Absolutely. It's just not one that you usually find in proteins. But this is an amino acid. Yeah? How do you get from hypotonic acid to muscimol? Loud? You take off the decarboxyl group. You are absolutely right. How do you do that? What's the process called? It's a decarboxylation. Absolutely right. Decarboxylation. Now, from your understanding of thermodynamics, sorry, I have to put that in. From your understanding of thermodynamics, would you believe that this is where the delta G is positive or negative for this reaction? The free energy for this reaction. Is this reaction positive? Does this reaction potentially happen or not? Potentially? Not spontaneously. So Alex basically says the reaction delta G is positive because it does not happen easily, spontaneously.
Does it depend on the temperature? 'Cause like
It does depend on the temperature, yes.
because it increases in entropy, so you'd assume that it's just
Perfect. There is an increase in entropy. Why? What is carbon dioxide? It's a gas. And you go basically from a solid to a gas, which always is a massive increase in entropy. So in this case, temperature drives this reaction, and, or I should say, temperature favors this reaction, and entropy drives this reaction. Because you make far more mess on the right-hand side, this reaction is actually negative. So the reaction is potentially possible thermodynamically. Yeah? But we need temperature for that. So now imagine you have this guy with a red fur coat, Santa. He is taking that stuff to be in touch with the spiritual world. By the way, unless you are a shaman and you have specific training, I would strongly recommend stay clear of fly agaric. The reason is it also contains things, substances that make you sick like a dog. You don't want to be sick, but I come back to that in a minute. So how does Muskimol actually work? Well, it mimics gamma-aminobutyric acid. GABA, as it is known, has an amino group here. And it's also a product of decarboxylation. It's a product of a decarboxylation reaction of another amino acid. Any idea what the amino acid could be in this case? You all have heard about it. Just simply imagine that at this point here, you have another carboxylic acid. Then you would end up with the amino acid glutamate. So GABA is a product of the decarboxylation of glutamate. Or glutamate, yeah. And GABA is a neurotransmitter produced in your brain. If you look at the structure of GABA and Muskimol, on the outset you don't see a lot of similarity, but if you overlay the two, like in this picture here, down here, you see that the most important groups actually match perfectly. So Muskimol will nicely bind to the GABA receptors in your brain. And we know that an overdose of GABA basically lets people believe that they can fly. Hey, fly agaric. This is why Santa is riding in the sky in his sleigh. Isn't that amazing? But then how on earth would ordinary people actually use this fly agaric? Wasn't it just for the sort of the shamans to get in touch with the spiritual world? Well, sort of. But shamans actually had not only the job of getting in touch with the spiritual world, they were also the Deliveroo of their time, or Amazon, and they provided people with, whatever they needed. Imagine you are in the middle of winter in northern Norway, Finland, Russia, lots of snow. The next village shop, hundreds of miles away. Then you had to get some stuff somewhere. So who could bring that to you? Well, obviously, people who are quite mobile. The shamans. Because they had sleighs, they had reindeers, probably not flying, but still they had that stuff. So you could actually place orders with the shamans. And what you could do is you could say, I need, 10 kilos of potatoes, 15 McDonald's, and all that stuff. And then the shaman would deliver it. But they had a problem. Snow. You basically sometimes couldn't even leave the house. So how could Santa actually deliver the stuff to you? Well, there's only one way into the house, isn't it? Through the chimney. Exactly. So you get your delivery not in the letterbox, but through the chimney. Boom. And of course, then, Santa had to get up to the roof. Otherwise, it's not possible to deliver. Makes sense. And because the shaman, thought, if I can have a good time with my drugs, I can give it to other people as well. But usually, there's a problem with it. Fly agaric, you need to eat a lot in order for this muscimol to kick in, because the amount of ibotenic acid is quite high, but the amount of muscimol is not. So you would need, in order to get a high, you would need to eat a lot of that stuff. And I just told you, it contains compounds that make you really sick. There are two ways to avoid feeling really sick. One way is people found that when a reindeer ate the fly agaric, they usually did not metabolize the muscimol, but they metabolized the compounds that make you sick. And the muscimol then was just simply excreted in the urine. So, a perfectly safe way of enjoying your high was to eat yellow snow from reindeers. The reindeers weed the muscimol, but that stuff was perfectly fine because they already got rid of the horrible compounds. That was one way, but I understand that it wasn't to everybody's taste. There's another way. And as you rightly said earlier, you can convert ibotenic acid into muscimol through temperature. So, shaman delivered the goods, your fly agaric. It wasn't really any good for you because you had to eat so much that you got sick. You wouldn't get the benefit of it. And you didn't want, actually, to eat yellow snow. So what you did was, you warmed up the fly agaric, and you also removed water, because this reaction is also, when you remove water, then the ibotenic acid decomposes easier. How can you do that? How can you warm up the mushrooms and remove water at the same time, but you don't fry the mushrooms, because that would destroy the muscimol? How would you do that? You dry them, exactly. So what is the best drying device? Sorry? An oven. Absolutely right. But imagine you are in the middle of Siberia, you don't have an oven, but what do you have? A fireplace. So all you need is a good container that absorbs the moisture, which you can put your mushrooms in next to the fireplace. What could you use for that? A stocking, exactly, right? So you have your stocking, you get your delivery of wax, you put the mushrooms in, you keep them next to the fireplace, and you dry them. How cool is that? Right? No yellow snow. And you get your fix. Of course, you want to repay Santa. How are you going to do that? Sorry? Cookies, yes. Or little presents. Carvings or something like that. Something that is terribly useful. But how do you get them to Santa? Well, you could give it to him when he does the delivery, but you don't know when he delivers. Right? So sort of almost a little bit like a surprise. But what if you had a sort of almost a post office where you could leave some presents for Santa in return for his deliveries? Of course, you don't want that on the ground, because then foxes and wolves and bears and reindeers could drag that stuff off. So you have designated trees. Probably even those trees where fly agaric mushroom grows, because you know that Santa will go there. By the way, fly agaric mushroom is incredibly difficult to culture. Actually, you can't culture it, whereas magic mushroom you can easily grow at home. Don't do it, but it's illegal. Fly agaric you can't grow at home because it has a very tight symbiotic relationship with its host tree. It forms this mycorrhiza, and there is this symbiotic relationship, usually between spruce and fir trees, which you find in these regions. That's why you find the mushroom there. So, fir tree, look at that, this is our Christmas tree, isn't it? And you leave the presents for Santa, or the payment for Santa, on the tree, not under the tree, but on the tree. That is where the Christmas decoration comes from. You see, it's all connected to each other. Yeah? The mushroom, Santa, the outfit, the shamans, the stocking, even the chimney. Exactly like Clement Moore described it. He even talked about this wreath of smoke. Yeah. It's great stuff. Yeah. Yeah. But then, that's only one side of the story. And as you can see, Santa, I have him down as a very prolific drug dealer. What do you think about it? Of course, Christmas is not just about drugs. At least it shouldn't be. Or presents, or Santa, or something like that. There are other things that are quite pleasant. What do you think that is?
Wine.
Mulled wine, Glühwein. Yeah, great stuff. The great thing about mulled wine is that you can take as cheap a wine as you can find, because the taste will always be masked by all sorts of spices in it. Isn't that great, eh? Just take absolutely cheap plonk. You probably want to also dissolve a few paracetamol in the mulled wine so that the next day the hangover is not so bad. Lemsip, yeah, but Lemsip is paracetamol.
Yep.
Yeah, so you can mix glühwein with mulled wine with paracetamol. You know, as I said, the hangover is not so bad than the next. Actually, why do you get a hangover? Dehydration. Okay. What happens in terms of biochemistry? So you've got ethanol. And this ethanol is converted by the enzyme ADH. It's not ADHD. It's alcohol dehydrogenase. It removes the hydrogen from the alcohol. And you end up with this compound here. How would you classify this compound? What is this? It's an aldehyde. Absolutely right. It's acetaldehyde. Reactive or not? Is it reactive? Which one is more reactive? The alcohol or the aldehyde? What would you say? Which one is more reactive?
Alcohol.
The alcohol? I'm terribly sorry to disappoint. It's always the aldehyde that is more reactive, because you can easily see that something can attack here on this carbon. Yeah, because the electrons are moved away from the oxygen by the oxygen. They are pulled away. So the carbon is really fairly positive in this case. So the aldehyde is fairly reactive, and it can actually react with a lot of transporters, like the porins, which are water transporters into the cell. That's why you get easily dehydrated when you have too much of the aldehyde. Usually the aldehyde is immediately detoxified. You remove the aldehyde, which is a strong toxin, with the enzyme aldehyde dehydrogenase, and you convert that into, what is this substance here? So, ethanoic acid, or other word? That? Acetic acid, absolutely. So usually you have this easily converted from ethanol to vinegar. That's actually the process that you do if you want to make vinegar. But sometimes, especially when you have a lot to drink, this reaction of the aldehyde dehydrogenase is slow. And therefore you have an accumulation of aldehyde. And that gives you the hangover. For certain people, this is in particularly a big problem. Who do you think this is? East Asians, you are absolutely right. East Asians very often, or you have a higher prevalence in East Asian societies of people with a mutation in the aldehyde dehydrogenase. And here the aldehyde dehydrogenase acts even slower. That means very often they get pissed very quickly with devastating consequences the next day. You were nodding, is that? Yeah. So take it easy, Tiger, right? do not drink faster than your aldehyde dehydrogenase can work, please. Yeah. Now, there are also other things that are incredibly pleasurable about Christmas. For example, what could it be? What do you like about Christmas in terms of, not just presents or Christmas carols or all the family coming together? I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but yeah. Other things that you associate with Christmas. Drinking, yeah, we had that. What else? Something to eat. What's lovely food for not just Christmas, but... Sorry? Brussel sprouts, yeah, little mini fart balls. Yeah. Interesting. I don't think it's everybody's taste, but anything else? Huh? Nut roast. We come to that, yes? What else? Turkey, yeah, we come to that. Anything else that you really enjoy, that you love eating? Not just Christmas, basically any time that makes you happy, huh? Chocolate. Oh, chocolate is a good thing, yeah. Why does chocolate make you happy? Endorphins, yes. Chocolate contains endorphins, yes. And it also contains other substances. It is that on the board. Anandamide. Very, very interesting substance, which brings us back to the drugs. Because the word ananda is Sanskrit and stands for happiness, bliss, joy. So this molecule, anandamide, is actually the joy molecule. And you find it in dark chocolate. Don't go for the crappy, milk chocolatey stuff. That's no good. Go for the dark one. You probably can see on the screen, the substance is composed of arachidonic acid and ethanolamine. Arachidonic acid is closely related to prostaglandins, so it reduces pain. And the ethanolamine, that's basically this part here. That's just simply an add-on for this anandamide. But what does this thing actually do, anandamide? Why does it make you happy? And Richard said, endorphins. Yes, we are going in the right direction. Because if you look at what is called the field points of anandamide, and actually THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, the structure of these two things look remarkably similar, don't they? Has the right shape, has all the right points, it's a completely different class of substance, but we know that anandamide binds to the cannabinoid receptors in the brain. That means instead of your next joint, go for some dark chocolate. Don't smoke the chocolate. It's not terribly nice. Dark chocolate also contains substances that stop the breakdown of anandamide. So the effect of anandamide lasts longer if you eat the substance, if you eat dark chocolate. Now, why on earth would a substance actually bind to a receptor? Actually, if you think about it, that is exactly the problem that you have currently with Dr. Wei Feng's assessment. It's just slightly different. It's the HIV protease, and you have inhibitors. But why would a substance actually bind to a receptor? So we have a receptor, and we have our anandamide. Why on earth should this anandamide bind to the cannabinol receptor? By the way, cannabinol receptors are predominantly found in the part of the brain that is called the reward network. Why would it bind? Sorry?
It's got high affinity.
It got high affinity. Good point. What does that mean?
It binds strongly
It binds strong. Yeah, but why?
because it's energetically favourable.
It's energetically favorable. Yes? It has the similar shape. Yes? Now, if I remember correctly, in your assessment with Dr. Wei Feng, you have again a delta G. You have a delta H. What was delta H again? What was that? You're absolutely right. It's the enthalpy.
Yep.
It's the enthalpy. It is how much energy you get from bonds out. Yeah? We know that for a reaction to happen, delta G is given by delta H minus T delta S. Did I get that right? Yeah? And in order for this reaction to happen, we also know that delta G needs to be negative. For many, many, many reactions, including anandamide to the receptor or indinavir with the HIV protease, delta H is, guess what? It's positive. With a positive delta H, you are basically screwed. You don't get a negative delta G, do you? So delta H is actually unfavorable for this reaction. But what makes it favorable then? You come back with the entropy. The entropy, delta S, is massively positive. So you have far more mess at the end than you had at the beginning. But how? If you look at it like I've drawn it at that point, You start with 2 compounds and you end up with just 1 compound. And I know my drawing is not great. You end up with 1. So that reduces the entropy. There's something weird going on. Where does this increase in entropy come from? Think about it. All substances, all reactions happen on the surface of the cell. What is the environment outside the cell? Is it fat or is it water? The outside of the cell. It's water, exactly. So, we don't have naked receptors. We have a very elaborate network of water molecules that cage in our receptor. And the receptor, the binding site, also has lots of water in it. It's highly ordered. But when you bind the ligand to the receptor, all the water is released. So your system becomes really, really messy, and that is where the entropy comes from. So this reaction, binding of a ligand to a receptor, is entropy-driven. Usually it's not enthalpy-driven. It's entropy-driven. Because water is released. Make sense? And that is exactly the same here with the anandamide and the THC. And the chocolate then gives you a really nice feeling of, oh, that's good. That's the anandamide in it. That's the bliss. Wonderful. Shouldn't we all have chocolate prescribed on the NHS? Actually, there's a downside. Usually chocolate is associated with a lot of other things that are not so healthy. For example, fat. And that's not good. As you know, you are, in a way, you are happy, but totally obese. The other problem is, if you bind to the cannabinol receptor, and that could be either anandamide or THC, and anandamide has exactly the same effect as THC, so it is called an agonist of the receptor. If you bind these 2 compounds, it has a significant effect on your working memory. It shuts down the working memory. So, smoking a spliff before an exam or eating lots of dark chocolate before an exam makes you happy, but you forget. So better not do it. Otherwise you are in a position where you are happy, but you can't remember a thing. It's a little bit like the lady who confused the contraceptive pill with her Valium. She's got 15 kids, but does she care? In your case, it would be, love, peace, and understanding. Oh, look, a buffer question. I don't give a damn. Right? Not such a good thing if you are at university. So please don't do drugs, and chocolate, dark chocolate, in moderation, right? But why does it taste so good? Sorry?
Hasn't it got like a certain binds with your taste receptors? It flexes at a certain way.
Ah, we are talking about taste receptors. That's interesting. How many different taste receptors do humans have, actually? How many different tastes can we discriminate?
Isn't it like 5 or something?
Alex says 5. We can discriminate between 5 different tastes. Is he right, 5? Can you tell the difference between, let's say, Brussels sprouts and carrots? Yes. And parsnips? Yeah. So you have loads of different flavors. How many different taste receptors do you have? How many different taste receptors? What do you think? Actually, Alex is right. We have 5, potentially 6. 5 different taste receptors, which are, you just started, sweet, salty, sour, bitter. One more? Umami. Exactly. What is umami? It is savory. Yeah. It's actually monosodium glutamate. That gives food its really characteristic meaty taste. Strong meaty taste. I don't know if you watch MasterChef. I have to endure it because my wife loves it. But there's this guy, you know, the one with the no hair, and he always goes like, "Oh, that has a really meaty taste." Yeah, what he tastes is umami. But then how come, if we've got only these 5, how come we can discriminate between, you know, all sorts of different things? It is the smell, it's the flavors, but they are not through taste receptors. They are through olfactory receptors, but not through the taste receptors. I said there might be a 6th one. Do you know? No. Very, very recently it has been discovered that in rodents, so rat and mice, it seems that there is a 6th taste receptor, which is fat. And people believe that humans have a very similar taste receptor for fat. That's why, potentially, we like things like deep-fried pizza or deep-fried Mars bar. Yeah? Or just chips.
What about like spice?
Sorry?
What about like spice?
Spice. Oh, that's an interesting one. How do we perceive spices? What do you mean by spice, actually?
Like, if something's like hot.
Like hot. Oh, hot. Because spice, it could be, for example, something like cinnamon, like nutmeg or something like that, yeah? And on the other hand, when you talk about spice, hotness.
Isn't, like in chili peppers, isn't it a molecule called capsaicin?
Capsaicin, yep.
Opens the iron,
Yep.
the iron channels in receptors
Yep.
that detect heat and abrasion, which tells your brain that
Absolutely
your mouth is on
right.
fire despite it not being anywhere near on fire.
Absolutely right. You're absolutely right. The substance in chilies, capsaicin, is a substance that binds to receptors, but they are not taste receptors. Has nothing to do with taste. They are actually receptors on the trigeminous nerve that innerves your mouth region. That is also the nerve where you have the herpes simplex virus sitting in. So if you've got mouth ulcers, that is caused by this virus that lives basically in this nerve. And this nerve actually reacts almost in an inappropriate way to capsaicin, to the substance in chilies. It is what people sometimes call an inappropriate response, because the nerve would usually react to temperature hot, or as you say, abrasion. Yeah? But in this case, by accident actually, the nerve reacts to the binding of this compound. And you can have other sort of wrong stimulus effects with other nerves. And you can try that. Don't do it too hard though. Right? What you can do is close your eye and gently press on the closed eye. What do you see? Color. You see, sometimes you see stars. Yeah? This is, again, your visual nerves usually respond just simply to light. But if you give a strong enough inappropriate stimulus, then they also react. So pressure, you have to do quite a lot of pressure, they will react. Trigeminous nerve with the capsaicin, again, it is sort of not the right stimulus, but the nerve will react as a sort of, oof, shit, that was hot. Right? Can you actually die from too spicy food, too hot food? No? Can you? Not directly. You're absolutely right. Not directly. Spicy food is not going to kill you. What is going to kill you is your reaction to it. Because the trigeminous nerve then signals to the brain, holy F, we have a problem here, shut down. We need to protect everything, so cut off the blood circulation to the brain. We need to protect the brain. This incredibly hot stuff, temperature hot stuff, must not get to the brain, cut it off. So what will happen is that your blood vessels go like, and that, if it is too extreme, can kill people. So don't overdo it. However, if you have chili, it is not going to harm you. It's not dangerous.
So it's a poison.
Sorry?
So it's a poison.
It is a poison. You're absolutely right. Capsaicin is a poison. Why has the chili pepper actually invented this poison?
So it doesn't get eaten.
Sorry?
So it doesn't get eaten.
So it doesn't get eaten. You are partially correct. The chili pepper has sort of evolved with a substance to prevent being eaten by mammals. why shouldn't mammals eat chili peppers? That's a circular argument. Why should mammals not eat chili peppers?
Digest the seeds.
They digest the seeds, exactly. So peppers and the capsaicin receptor have sort of co-evolved. In chicken and in birds, the seed is not digested, and they don't feel the heat. Actually, you can feed your chicken with chili peppers, with the Scotch bonnet and the California Reaper. These are the, the blows your head off. And I'm never ever going to taste this nuclear waste again stuff, right? With chicken, they love it. And it's quite handy because, if you then eat the chicken, it's like you've got your Nando's. Just by feeding the chicken spicy chili peppers. They don't suffer. I actually discovered that my dog doesn't like it, but the dog is a mammal. So flavors, spices, great stuff. But also, very often, how do we generate flavors? Obviously, very often through cooking, through spices, through a lot of interesting things. So, Christmassy. Alex, you've got your nut roast. Does that look appealing? Yeah? Anyone else? Turkey? Yeah? Who's going to have turkey for Christmas? Hands up.
And then 7 days afterwards as well.
Or, yeah, for 3 weeks afterwards. Oscar, what is the thing in Norway?
Either smoked lamb, like on the bone,
Okay.
or pig ribs.
Oh, lovely. That sounds really good. I like the idea of the lamb. What color is it, the meat? Huh?
Red or brown.
Red or brown? Oh, yeah, so nice.
Very salty.
How do you get actually this brown, nice, flavorful skin on a turkey or lamb, or, if you've ever had spare ribs, honey glazed spare ribs, does that ring a bell? Yeah? Oh, that's good stuff, isn't it? How do you get that? So here is the recipe for the perfect turkey. Or nut roast. You can do that with nut roast as well. You actually make use of a chemical reaction which is called the Maillard reaction. And in this reaction, what you do is you have a molecule, for example, sugar here, yeah? Ordinary sugar. It has to have either an aldehyde or a ketone function. It has to be in the open conformation. And you react it with what's that? And amino acid. What happens? actually, this electron pair, how would you describe this electron pair? Electrophile, or what could it be? Is it electrophile? Or is it? It's a nucleophile. It is looking for a positive thing. Where do we have a positive thing? Well, I told you earlier we have a positive thing here in the aldehyde. Because the aldehyde can actually do something like that. Yeah? But you have to have the free electron pair in your amino group. How do you get a free electron pair in the amino group? What is the amino group usually charged under physiological conditions? Is it charged? Usually have your amino acid as a, what is it called? Yeah, loud? It's a Zwitter ion, exactly, which means it has a negative and a positive charge. Here. Now, if it is positively charged, it doesn't have a free electron, and therefore it would not be able to react with the sugar. So how do you get rid of?
Deprotonate.
You deprotonate. How do you do that?
By putting it into a basic.
Yes, absolutely right. You put it into a basic environment. So if your pH is higher than the pKa of the amino group, you make it neutral, you have it as a free electron pair. Yeah? Now, what happens if we actually do that? We eventually get something like that, plus water. So basically, we remove water, dehydration, and get this product here. And this product then undergoes rearrangements. They're called Amador rearrangement. And what you eventually get something like that, which then again can react and form rings and a lot of different compounds. These are all compounds that contribute to the aroma, not the stuff that you pick up with your taste sensors, but that is the aroma that you recognize through your olfactory senses. And you probably all have been in a position where you had a stinking cold. Yeah? Could you taste anything? Not really. Well, actually, you did taste things. You could taste salt. You could taste bitter. Yeah? but you can't taste any aroma because the aroma is not a taste, it is a smell. And people who have problems with their olfactory system do not appreciate nice food because they can't taste it. They are usually quite cheap dates because you just feed them sawdust. Just dress it up slightly. They can't tell the difference. Hey, how cool is that? Yeah? So what do you need to do in order to get the perfect roast turkey? You have all the things already there, basically. On the skin, you have lots and lots of protein. That's where your amino groups are coming from. You can actually add a little bit more just simply by using a bit of protein extract. For example, Marmite is a good source of protein extract because it's just hydrolyzed yeast. So you can sprinkle a little bit of Marmite on top of your turkey. Even for those people who don't like Marmite, it will change totally the flavor of the turkey. You then also sprinkle a little bit of sugar on your turkey. That's the second ingredient. And how do we make it basic? We just add a tiny little bit of sodium carbonate, baking powder. Sprinkle it on top. You have a basic environment. You've got the sugar, you've got the amino acid. And it goes in the oven. You need about 120 degrees centigrade for that, but you would cook the turkey usually at a high temperature anyway, unless you cook the turkey overnight. You can do that. You can cook your turkey at about 65 degrees centigrade, but you have to cook it for about 14, 15, 16 hours. The advantage of that is the meat stays nice and moist. It's absolutely delicious. Sometimes turkey is like cardboard. Yeah? If you cook it for a very long time at low temperature, you don't lose the water and the meat doesn't get hard and dry. The downside is the temperature is too low for the Maillard reaction, so the turkey will look like many British holidaymakers when they first arrive in Mallorca. They have this lovely maggoty appearance, totally white. But if you don't mind, that's all right. If you want a nice, crispy skin, really tasty, and I need to stop now because I salivate so badly, use the Maillard reaction to get a lovely brown, crispy skin, incredibly flavorful. If you really want to, then add some Brussels sprouts. Make sure you don't. Actually, what you should do with Brussels sprouts is you should have them with caraway seeds, because caraway seeds, and next term we will discuss that a little bit more, caraway seeds help you through some compounds. They basically stop you from farting. So if you are prone to wind, Brussels sprouts are probably not a good idea, but if you eat them with caraway seeds, delicious and stops you. I better stop now. And